Shaun, Rabb, the legislature is coming down to its final days. It's 13 days as of this recording until signing die, and a big topic has been bail reform. Tell me what you are digesting lawmakers is focusing on in these final days.
So it's been 10 years in the making, minimum, right? Much discussion about bail reform. We'll talk about all of that, but here's what it's keeping accused people in jail. It's keeping people with a history in jail until they go to trial. That's what this reform that's moved through the Senate and the House is all about. Folks who have committed crimes with a weapon, namely a gun, aggravated robbery, assault, deadly weapon, aggravated kidnapping, sexual assault, and of course, murder. Under this legislation, if it moves through and is signed, a judge must, in many of those cases, deny bail. And there are other sets of cases where the judge has discretion, but then that can be appealed. And there's a whole 20-day process for prosecutors to prove I should stay in jail. And in the meantime, I'm in jail without bail. So this is definitely a return to stricter law and crime kind of mentality in Texas.
Yeah, this is definitely a going to draw a line in the sand for lawmakers as to who's quote unquote tough on crime and who's not. This has been a priority of the governor, lieutenant governor. It's actually a bipartisan issue, but Republicans have really been pushing this. And it would dramatically change things. Now, if the big portion of this passes, it would force a constitutional amendment vote. So we're still waiting as of this recording to see if that will clear the House. The Senate has already done it, but if it will clear the House with not a bunch of changes that the Senate won't agree with.
And let's tell people why it would
Yeah.
require a vote of the public in November, because the state constitution says every person arrested and placed in jail is allowed to have bail, except in very, very limited cases, that is capital murder or repeat offenses, or a person who had bail and violated the conditions of that bail multiple times. Those are the only people, according to the state constitution, that cannot at this moment have a bail. And so, in order to change that, the citizens of Texas would have to vote on this and say, yes, we want this now, amend our state constitution.
Why do you think this is coming to a head in this session? Why do you think, you mentioned this has been years in the making, right? Why do you think there's an appetite now for lawmakers and they need help from Democrats? So lawmakers on both sides to say this is something we should put to the voters.
Well, we've heard of some egregious cases where people have been out on bail and committed another violent crime. If you will, the place where everyone has pointed to has been Harris County. Advocates for this say since 2020, over 200 people have been killed by folk who were out of jail on bail. And so the governor's been pushing this. And interestingly enough, what the Democrats have put forward, what the House has passed thus far, has been tougher, stricter than pieces of legislation that were proffered in past sessions. So right now, it seems to be people are in agreement that something must be done, and they're moving forward in a surprising way.
Harris County has been the kind of the poster county for this. You mentioned the stats right there, but we've also had cases up here in North Texas, and it's happening across the state, and it happens in other states. Of in some cases, people who are out on bond get bail for a certain crime, and then they commit another crime. We have a case that both of us have done in recent weeks about a person accused of murder, and now the day of his jury selection, he cut his ankle monitor and he's on the run.
Right. And remember, while he was on bond the first time, he violated the conditions of that bond. He had a $2 million bond for capital murder. He violated the conditions of the bond, was rearrested, had another $2 million bond, posted that bond again, and now has disappeared, cutting off his ankle monitor. That's an example of what's happening here in North Texas. Now, he hasn't committed another crime that we know of, but these are the kinds of cases lawmakers point to.
Do you who does this put more pressure on if, voters agree with lawmakers? Does it put more pressure on judges? I mean, judges mostly are elected here on party basis. And so does it put more pressure on, let's just say it, Democrat judges, or is this lawmakers passing the buck? I guess they're not really passing the buck because the people of Texas has to approve this change. But who
Right.
does it put more pressure on?
Well, certainly it puts pressure first on the magistrates who set bond when you're arrested and come in, but really on the judges, because judges, if they, in some of these cases we're talking about, these aggravated cases, should they go ahead and issue a bond, then they will have to, in writing, defend, explain, justify their reason for bail. Prosecution has 20 days to argue against that, to litigate that out. But now they have to put in writing why they gave John Doe bail despite his history, despite what he's been charged with. And that certainly puts pressure on judges. You saw in this past election cycle the political ads that pushed the Democrat judges, and you saw what happened at the appeals court. There was a sweep of those judges. So, yes, it does put a lot of pressure on those judges. It also puts pressure, I think, on people who cannot afford bond, who are at the lower end of that spectrum, who might be charged with less serious offenses but can't afford to get out of jail, because I think judges will be hesitant to give bonds on what seems to be routine cases because they'll have to justify it in writing somewhere.
And to wrap this up, ACLU Texas, to your point, had spoken out against parts of this. Now, it appears Democrats are in lockstep with Republicans on the majority of this, but there's
Yes.
one, and as of this recording, it's gotten delayed at least once so far. SJR 1, which specifically speaks to undocumented people when it comes to bond. That seems like Democrats may be drawing a line in the sand with this. What do you think?
I feel like this whole immigration piece, and it's really part of that, right, is why the Democrats are pushing back on that part, because it would include certain felonies as well as like drug cases where they would be denied bond, where Texans, U.S. citizens, get bond on drug cases. So this is going to be a sticking point on whether those people who might be living here undocumented and are arrested, charged with these kinds of crimes, whether this will apply to them. To the Democrats, going to fight that part. We'll see how it shakes out in the last 13 days or so. They've got to get this done by what, 28th of May, and then get it to the governor.
Yes, yes. So 13 days until signing day, but actually a shorter timeline, like you mentioned, to really see if we're going to have this become law this session, or will there be a special session? This is a priority for Governor Abbott. So if it doesn't clear, you'll likely see a special session on this and probably some other things. So we'll have much more coverage of that as the days progress.
One thing is for sure, over the last few years, there's been much talk about reducing the number of people in mass incarceration. There's been much leaning, if you will, towards quote unquote social justice and a kinder, gentler justice system. This is the antithesis of that. Keep them in longer, no bail until trial, which will also be a burden on county jails across the state.